Hey, what's going on, guys? OJ back here with another video. Today, we're here to talk about all of the fights to make after UFC Vegas 112, Manel Kape versus Brandon Royval. I'm not going to be covering every single fighter that fought on this card, but just the relevant fighters that we as fans mostly care about. So, without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the video. Now, I thought that Joshua Van was going to fight Tatsuro Taira sometime early 2026 as Joshua Van's first title defense. But after what Manel Kape did to Brandon Royval last night, we need to give Manel Kape the next title shot, right? Unless Pantoja is going to make like a 3-4 month turnaround. I don't see that happening. So let's give Manel Kape the next title shot, and then the winner of this fight can fight Pantoja, right? Manel Kape just knocked out Brandon Royval in the first round. That is incredible to say. No one's done Brandon Royval like that. And both guys took relatively no damage. And both guys are exciting, high level strikers. This is the obvious fight to make. Please book this UFC. All right. I would prefer this sometime in March. I know the February cards are a little bit too stacked, so I'm not expecting uh this happened in February, but I think March is realistic considering both guys, they're pretty fresh considering how their last few fights played out. I think both guys really want to fight each other, especially Manel Kape seeing the call out he made to Joshua Van last night. So this is the obvious fight to make, unless Pantoja's gonna come back soon, but I don't see that happening. So Manel Kape, Joshua Van, book it sometime in March or April of 2026. Moving on, we got Brandon Royval. It's a little bit tough for him considering he got knocked out in the first round by Manel Kape. He's gonna need some time off, but I do think that Brandon Royval would want to fight unless he's gonna move up to bantamweight. I say he's gonna have to fight someone way below him in the rankings, and I think Charles Johnson is that guy to fight him, who's way below him in the rankings. Now, Charles Johnson, he did, he did get a fight booked with Alex Perez, but spoiler alert, I do think that Charles Johnson can beat Alex Perez. So Brandon Royval, once he heals up, and if Charles Johnson doesn't take that much damage, I can see this fight being booked sometime in the middle or late of 2026. Keep in mind, this is also a rematch because they fought each other in the LFA tournament where Brandon Royval came off a close decision. So I do think this is a very compelling rematch. And I think this is how we can potentially see whether or not Charles Johnson can get himself into the top five of the flyweight division. Moving on, we got Kevin Vallejos coming off a brutal knockout over Giga Chikadze. I mean, nobody does Giga Chikadze like that. Not to use my Joe Roganisms here, but still, it was a very impressive spinning back fist. And I think Kevin Vallejos should be rewarded with a high ranking opponent for that. And that high ranking opponent is Josh Emmett. Right now, Josh Emmett, there is the threat of the overhand right, but outside of that, he has not been looking too sharp as of recently. Josh Emmett is gonna have to fight way below him in the rankings, considering he's on a little bit of a loss streak. But he's still number 10 in the featherweight division, so I think this is a comfortable jump up for Kevin Vallejos because he's fighting a veteran who's not been looking the best recently, but still has a very sizable name and a very good ranking in the featherweight division. So let's see this fight booked sometime in, I say April or May of 2026. Kevin Vallejos may need some time off considering he got his body snapped by Giga Chikadze a little bit. Right, Giga Chikadze was hammering with him with the body kicks nonstop. And as for Josh Emmett, he's coming off that loss to Yusuf Zalal. Took no damage, but it's gonna be a little bit hard for Josh Emmett to get back in there, considering he's like what, 41 years old. So yeah, let's book Kevin Vallejos versus Josh Emmett sometime in the middle of 2026. Now, moving on, we got Cezary Oleksiejczuk. Had a bit of a stinker against Cesar Almeida, not gonna lie. But low key, I was kind of expecting that if Cesary was gonna use a heavy grappling approach, which he did, so fair enough. I think Cesary, he's gonna have to build himself a little bit, and he's gonna have to get some highlight reel KOs to get back on the hype train. And I think that person to get a highlight reel KO over is Eric Anders. Eric Anders coming off that loss to CLD. He is getting a lot older now. He's like 38 years old. He can prove to be a little bit tricky. You know, Eric Anders has some sneaky, underrated, crafty wins. But as of recently, Eric Anders has not been looking the best. So let's give Cezary Oleksiejczuk a little bit of a test with Eric Anders. Let's see whether or not Cezary can knock out Eric Anders. And if he can, that's how we get Cezary Oleksiejczuk back on track as a prospect. All right, now moving on, we got Melquizael Costa coming off a first round knockout win over Morgan Charrier. I think Melquizael Costa deserves a ranked opponent. He's coming off 4 wins in 2025 alone, and he's looked impressive in most of these wins. And I think he deserves a test to see whether or not he's ranked material. And that test comes in Dan Ige. Dan Ige's down to fight anybody. He hasn't been too active recently, though. He kind of just beat, lost to Patricio Pitbull and hasn't really got a fight since. So I think this is a good way to see where Dan Ige's at in his career, and also a test to see whether or not Melquizael Costa can become a ranked featherweight. So let's have Melquizael Costa fight Dan Ige early 2026. You know, both fighters took relatively no damage in their last fight. And I think this is going to be the perfect way to see whether or not Melquizael Costa can become a ranked featherweight. Moving on, we got Bobby Green coming off that win against Lance Gibson Jr. A lot of showboating, but really just outpointing him barely. And it was not the greatest performance ever. So I think Bobby Green, now that he's got his layup win, he's gonna need to fight another prospect. And that prospect is gonna be Chris Padilla. Chris Padilla coming off a 4 fight win streak against the likes of Jai Herbert, Ismail Bonfim, Rong Zhu, and James Lontoff. I think this is where we start building Chris Padilla up as a possible ranked contender. And we're gonna do that by giving him Bobby Green. Chris Padilla, he's looked solid in most of his fights, and this is a test to see whether or not he's just can crushing, or if he's actually got a future in the lightweight division. So let's have Chris Padilla fight Bobby Green, and if Chris Padilla wins, then we can talk about fights that are like close to the rankings of the lightweight division. Moving on, we got Joanderson Brito beat Isaac Thompson. It was a pretty close fight, not the most exciting, but still, Joe Anderson Brito won. Does it convince me that Joe Anderson Brito's ranked material? By far, no. But let's see whether or not Joe Anderson Brito can actually get back into the rankings. And I think that good fight we can get Joe Anderson Brito is Do Ho Choi. Now, I'm not just saying this because Duo Choi is Korean, but I do think this is a solid fight where I can see both guys winning. Joe Anderson Brito has leveled up his wrestling, but Duo Choi, I believe, is the much sharper striker. So let's see where both of these guys are at in their career. Also, it's interesting to see where Duo Choi is at, considering he hasn't fought in 2025 at all. So let's have Joe Anderson Brito versus Duo Choi. Book this sometime, I'd say early 2026. You know, Duo Choi hasn't really fought. Joe Anderson Brito didn't take that much damage in his fights. So let's book this March, April 2026. And the winner can possibly find themselves in a matchup where they can get a ranked contender. Moving on, we got Yaroslav Amosov coming off a round 1 submission over Neil Magny. Now, when you look at this screen, this looks like a ridiculous matchup because on paper, Todd Brady is a top 10 contender, and Yaroslav Amosov technically isn't ranked. But I would like to see this matchup because I think this is the best grappling matchup we can make in the welterweight division. Sean Brady, known for his elite level jiu-jitsu, did get knocked out by Michael Morales in his last fight, so is gonna need some time off. But still, I do think that Sean Brady still has a shot to potentially get himself a title shot in the welterweight division. And I think this is also a fun fight for both fighters because both fighters have a very similar style. Yaroslav Amosov is primarily a grappler with elite level jiu-jitsu. Like this is one of those fights where like you would actually prefer to see the grappling over the striking. So hopefully this fight potentially gets made sometime in the middle of 2026. All right, Yaroslav Amosov versus Sean Brady. I'm actually excited to imagine how these scrambles will play out. And if Yaroslav Amosov can beat Sean Brady via grappling, that would prove he's legit. And I think that Amosov, if he beats Sean Brady, can potentially find himself in a title elimination bout in 2026. Moving on, though, we got Steven Asplund versus Alvin Hines. Steven Asplund coming off a second round KO over Sean Sheriff. I think we need to build up Steven Asplund a little bit, and we just need to give him another can. And another can we have in mind is Alvin Hines. Alvin Hines, kind of the goonster of the heavyweight unranked section. He just has a very durable chin and nothing else. Like he can grapple a little bit, but I don't see it being effective against Steven Asplund. So this is how we're gonna build up Steven Asplund. Just give him a bunch of cans with a lot of with tough chins, and let's see whether or not Steven Asplund can break records in significant strikes against Alvin Hines. All right, I think this is a great matchup to make. And I think this is how we're gonna build up Steven Asplund as a future ranked contender in the heavyweight division. Alright, that's gonna be it for this video. If you guys want to see more videos like this, please make sure to like and subscribe so we can monetize the channel. Otherwise, though, leave a comment down below how you guys feel about these matchups. And outside of that, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.